to the children of jobless Nigerians. I will advise them that with the establishment of the institute and with what we are doing presently, like I said earlier, we have been to a working paper mill. And what we learned is that the paper mill has been sold. And the institute is putting up a right to have the governments to tell us the position of sales. Because we can do it like Yalem said, we cannot do it alone. But I bet you the pop tree on the ground now, planted by Murtala Mohammed, is still there from Benin Expressway down to a working pop and paper mill, standing. And they have been producing papers in a working mill before. What happens to those machines? Who bought the mill? Who bought it over? Who is the person? And when they bought it, are they operating? But when we were there about 1 month ago, the whole place was bushy. It's only the pop tree you will see standing. The two gates leading to the paper mill, they did not allow us to enter. So we need government to support us. And like Yalem said, we can produce paper here. We are talking of problem of textbooks. Paper mill and pulp industry can provide employment for millions of people. And trading opportunity, that is, paper dealers will be there. So please, we need government. We can do it here. But the publisher needs to bear with us. If Nigerian can pay for the charge card, they should be able to buy the book printers here in Nigeria. They shouldn't say because of the high cost and because of that they are taking the books to go and print in India. Otherwise, they should sell it to the children in India because the printers here are jobless.
Wow, thank you very much. Just before we come back again to both Mrs. Shogunle and Bayo Atoyobi, Shogunle in Ibadan and Bayo with us here in the Abuja studios. A thought just flashed through my mind. I was going to say, based on the suggestions made already by the two professional printers, Yaliam and Wahab, I was going to ask Ali M. Ali, if you were to write an editorial on this, what are the issues that you will highlight as solutions? First, we have seen that, okay, pulpwood has been planted. I'm sure some of them, most of them are still standing. A few probably have been burnt in bushfires and so on and so forth. The paper mills, were privatized, but they do not appear to be working. What issues would you highlight in your editorial?
Yeah, well, first of all, thankfully the raw material is there. The plantations are there. So you've knocked out a fundamental problem because the raw materials are indigenous. So the first thing we want to, in an editorial like you, we want to emphasize in the editorial is half the work is done if the government, but then you see, in as much as this is a private sector business, also the government has to make provide the enabling environment, one of which the machines are there, then making other requirements available. Of importance, crucial significance here is the issue of power. We emphasize that over and over again, just like the problem we're having in the energy sector, especially petroleum resources. The crude oil is indigenous to us, but sometimes it's taken abroad for refining because our local refineries cannot meet the capacity, the local, requirements, the needs of local needs. Now, draw the attention of government because even if all the three paper mills are working up and about, probably they cannot meet the local requirement. Then this is when import may be necessary because the market, like we said earlier, is quite huge when you have over 100 million people. Some say as almost close to 200 million people. But then of that also, what is the readership level? How many people are literate enough to buy, and then how many have the disposable income to buy newspaper? So we highlight the importance first of having power, stable power, and then encouraging, skill. We have a lot of polytechnics, Department of Printing Technology all over, and polytechnics especially, and in some places, in universities even. So issue of skilled manpower is granted, because we have graduates of printing technology. But then we draw the attention of the government to provide the enabling environment. And then also, like somebody said, suggest something very radical when you have this enabling environment. Something as radical as completely banning import of newsprint and related paper. So this is some of the issues we highlight in our editorial. But it's important that the government provide the enabling environment. Then, because, for instance, some of the infrastructure, private sector cannot provide that necessary for stimulation of local production of newsprint. So these are some of the things that we highlight and draw the attention of the government. And of course, the rest also, this cutthroat competition, like somebody among the discussant raised, maybe cost of production may be lower in some places outside the shores of Nigeria, but then ultimately the market is here. So then you have something done outside the shores of the country, but essentially for people who consume here, and the people who consume don't have the income to patronize all this. And so you are back to
that's right.
Square one.
Yeah. Well, Ali, thank you very much. I was just wondering, Claire, Bayo, listen to what way you guys have said on the program and the direction of the conversation. Yes, if the wood is available, one of the critical raw materials you need to produce paper, and the plants, were there in the past, privatization went on. We recall that in the last National Assembly, there were attempts, to reopen the privatization of some of these enterprises. Are we seeing the failure of privatization in this regard, and what should the government do?
Well, if, for instance, Okoye-Ibuku was privatized and sold off, the intention of that was to ensure that a private enterprise that has taken over will get the place running. But if that place is still short, then it means that the intention has failed. And it's still not out of place if government revisits that and says, look, our intention for selling with you, the agreement is that this place will be kept running. Since it is not running, we'll rather have it back and then look at how to revive it. But the danger here is that, yes, we all agree there are plantations across the country, from Benin up to Okoye-Ibuku. Along Jos, there is too. But there is a danger already. At the fringes, people are chopping the wood down for firewood. And some are also falling, some of them, for electrical poles. And therefore, gradually, we are depleting the raw material for the pulp for printing paper. Secondly, if we had these three mills running, Okoye-Ibuku, Iwokwe, and Jeba, can they meet the printing requirement, the paper requirement in Nigeria? And the answer is simply no. And therefore, it would be unwise to say that they should ban importation of newsprint. So it should be a quantum of percentage. If we are able to get them running, what percentage of paper will we be able to provide in Nigeria? Then secondly, the inputs. You mentioned about ink, a byproduct of hydrocarbon. We have a petrochemical refinery in Kaduna and Port Harcourt. Petrochemicals can produce from the slippers you wear from getting to bed up to toothpaste and everything you use before you get out. Petrochemicals can produce them, including all these inputs, inks. What are the byproducts from our petrochemicals doing that we cannot produce that? You recall that just 2 weeks ago, a minister was lamenting that in this country, we still import pencil. We have lead, yet we don't produce not one single pencil and we import it. But if we must advance, the government of the day must be bold enough to take certain critical decisions. We often talk about the Asian tigers. One of the way Malaysia progressed was that anything we cannot produce, we don't need. They shut their doors and began to look inwards. For now, we always say Nigeria has the largest economy. That is a fallacy. The truth of the matter is that that statement is predicated on the potential that we have. But unless we get our acts together and get that potential into actual action and living, we will continue to harm on the fact that we have the largest economy, while actually we are not activating those impetuses that will make us that largest economy. So, two things. Like you asked Ali, if you were to write an editorial, what are the inputs required? Are they available? If they are not available, how do we go about them? What percentage of it is to be imported? And what level of subsidy by way of tariff reduction can be given to those industries so that we can keep ourselves going until we can be wholly self-sufficient about getting all those inputs. Yes.
All right, Bayo, thank you. Let's get back to Ibadan. Mrs. Shogunle, final question from me. If we are to be self-sufficient in pulp and paper, of course, we do know that in the past, this is a sector that used to employ, hundreds of thousands of people. Now, if we're to be self-sufficient in that area, obviously, there have to be new investments. What do you think we can do to bridge the gap in the development technologies, new development, technological development?